Hi everyone! In this video I just wanted to talk about my experiences going through the first trimester of pregnancy. This is my second time getting pregnant, but the first time I miscarried at 9 weeks. So this is the first time that I've gone through the whole first trimester. And I wanted to make this video for my own memories, but if you guys find it interesting or informative, then that's great too. Do keep in mind that every pregnancy is different, so what I have experienced may not be the same as what you have or you will experience. But I just wanted to start off with a rundown of the symptoms that I've experienced and then end with some of the highlights from this first trimester. So TJ and I had been trying to get pregnant and I knew when my period was supposed to come. So I took a home pregnancy test at exactly 4 weeks. And we had been trying for a few months, so it was really exciting when we got the positive. But that first week, or I should say the fourth week, the first week of knowing, I didn't have any symptoms at all other than the lack of a period. And then week 5, I didn't really have any symptoms either, except that I noticed that my chest felt a little tender. And I've heard stories of like some women say that it's really uncomfortable for them. But in my case, it was really mild. So I didn't even notice it most of the time. It was kind of like a bruise where if you put pressure on it, you notice some discomfort. But like other than that, you don't really notice it at all. So it wasn't really a big deal to me. Weeks 6 and 7 were when I first started to notice symptoms. And it kind of surprised me because the last time that I got pregnant, I didn't have any morning sickness whatsoever the entire time. And so I thought maybe I was just one of those people like who didn't experience morning sickness. But this time around, it was actually starting like a few days before week 6. It was like 5 weeks, 5 days. I felt so nauseous all day, every day. It wasn't just in the morning. And I know every woman and every pregnancy is different. But for me, I felt nauseous. I actually felt slightly less nauseous in the mornings. So like still nauseous, but I didn't have any trouble having breakfast. And then it got worse during lunch and dinner. That was when I felt the most queasy. I never threw up. I was thankful for that. But it was definitely uncomfortable. And what made it even worse was that I was so hungry all the time. And if you've ever had morning sickness, you know, I assume this is true for most people from what I've heard, that when you are hungry, it makes the nausea feel worse. So I was nauseous all day and hungry and eating more than usual because I didn't like getting hungry because it just felt worse. So I was snacking a lot and eating more than usual, and it was just an uncomfortable period. And in my case, I had aversions to meat and almost all Thai food, which is unfortunate and inconvenient because I live in Thailand. So the only things that I could eat that didn't make me feel nauseous were fruit and yogurt. So I just ate a lot of pastas and cheese and crackers and fruit and yogurt, basically. So there was one period where I actually discovered shrimp, which is interesting because usually I'm not a big fan of shrimp. Like I like most types of seafood. I love fish and squid and crab, but I've never been like a big fan of shrimp. But to my surprise, when I ate it, it actually made me feel less nauseous. And so there was a period of about 3 or 4 days where I had shrimp every day because I was like, oh, this is great. I don't love it, but I can eat it. And it actually made me feel less nauseous after I ate it. And then after that, I just got sick of it. And I haven't eaten any shrimp since then. So I don't know when I will be able to eat shrimp again. But right now, it does not hold any appeal to me. By week 8, I still had constant all-day nausea, but it was much milder, and my hunger levels went back to normal, so I was much more comfortable then. And my aversion to meat decreased. I still didn't want to eat it, and so I still just avoided it, but it didn't seem as repulsive to me as it did the previous 2 weeks. By weeks 9 and 10, the nausea was a lot better. I really only had it whenever I was triggered by hunger or being in the car for long periods of time. But if I was like staying at home for most of the day, as I was doing because we were in lockdown, and as long as I was like snacking and not letting myself get hungry, I didn't have any nausea. I still had food aversions to curry, but my food aversion towards meat was lessening. So sometimes I could eat chicken or pork or fish, but it still wasn't like I didn't have any desire really to eat it, but it was just that I could eat it and like not feel nauseous or repulsed by it. By week 11, I was back to normal. I didn't have any nausea even when I was hungry or when I was in the car. And then by weeks 12 and 13, I felt like my sense of smell and my sense of taste had gone completely back to normal, and I no longer had aversions to meat or curry or anything. So for me, that was the most interesting symptom of pregnancy, was having my sense of smell and my sense of taste change. And I'm not sure I would have noticed it as much if I had been living in the US, but Thai cuisine has a lot of strong smells that I think if you're not used to it, a lot of people find smelly and offensive, and a lot of strong flavors. And I personally like most of these smells. So for example, salted fish, fermented soybean paste, shrimp paste, stink bean, durian, like all of those are scents that I usually enjoy. And so it was really strange for me once I got pregnant. It was like my sense of smell. I mean, I had heard that your sense of smell does get stronger when you're pregnant, and that like you might find the smell of your trash can more offensive than usual and stuff like that. But I wasn't expecting smells that I had previously liked to suddenly smell terrible to me. And it wasn't just like, it wasn't all strong smelling things that I found offensive. So for example, the fermented soybean paste, like that was one smell that like still felt fine to me, and I could still eat it and not have any problems. But the salted fish and the shrimp paste and the stink bean were just terrible. And it was really difficult too, because like I was snacking on these like plain crackers and cheese and American foods, but TJ, my husband, he's not a big fan of American food, so he was still cooking all these Thai dishes, and I didn't want to have to force him to eat bland food with me because I didn't want us to both be miserable. And in general, he did try to be considerate towards me, which was very sweet of him. So he like didn't cook as many of the strong smelling dishes as he usually would. Like he didn't cook the salted fish at all after that first time, but then he still loves curry, and so I would just have to put up with the smell of curry. I was also worried that it was going to be like this long-term thing, because my nausea only lasted for about 3 weeks, but my altered sense of smell and taste, that lasted for like the entire first trimester, even after the nausea was gone. And I was worried that I wouldn't be able to enjoy any of my usual favorite Thai foods anymore, but then fortunately at around the 12-13 week mark, I was back to enjoying all of my favorite Thai dishes. For those of you who know what durian is, I'm not sure if I found that offensive actually, because I actually avoided durian because I was worried that I wouldn't like the smell of it, which would have been really sad for me because I love durian. So I avoided it for like the first month or so, but I did try it at around week 10, and fortunately, I didn't have any problems with the smell. And then another one is jackfruit, which has a pretty strong smell also. And that one I was able to eat throughout my entire first trimester without any problems. So it seems like I was okay with fruit smells, but it was just more of some of the savory smells that I had problems with. Anyways, I'm back to normal now. That's good news. Some other notes about first trimester symptoms. I know a lot of women talk about having to pee more often. I didn't actually notice a difference in this, but I'm not sure if it's because I just have a small bladder in general and I pee often anyway, so it didn't seem any more frequent to me. But towards the end of the first trimester, I did notice that any jumping exercises, like anything that involved bouncing, like running or jumping jacks, that did feel uncomfortable and it made me feel like I had to pee. So that makes sense because your uterus is pressing on your bladder. And another big one that a lot of women talk about is fatigue and just feeling exhausted during the first trimester. And I actually did not really experience this either. I did sleep more than usual. So pre-pregnancy, I would usually sleep like 7 to 8 hours. And then during the first trimester, I was sleeping about 8 to 9 hours and sometimes even 10 hours. So I was sleeping a lot at night, but then during the day, I never felt fatigued or sleepy. And then I would feel my usual amount of sleepiness in the evening, even though I was sleeping more than usual. I had a lot of bloating earlier on in the first trimester, which was interesting to me because I've never had bloating before. Like I know some women have it during their period. I've never had it. And so there were some times when I looked super pregnant, even in the early stages when the baby was only like the size of a bean or something. And the bloating has gone down now. I really don't have any. So I feel like now my baby bump actually looks smaller than it did like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'm 15 weeks now, so I'll give you a quick shot of the bump. Honestly, you can't really even tell because I don't have bloating anymore. So it doesn't look like I'm pregnant. So the last symptom that I wanted to talk about was feeling emotional. And I consider myself fairly emotional in general. Like it's pretty easy for me to cry during movies. But the past couple of months have been more emotional than usual. Not in terms of my personal life. So like I wasn't getting upset or frustrated or emotional about work or relationships or any of that, but I just cried so much during movies and TV shows, or like hearing about other women who have struggled with infertility. I've been following along with Desi Perkins's series of videos where she talks about trying to get pregnant and stuff, and so like watching those videos made me really emotional. I think most of the movies that TJ and I have watched during this first trimester, I've cried for some reason or another. Like sometimes they're happy tears and sometimes they're sad tears, but like TJ does not cry during movies. He just doesn't get emotionally attached the way that I do, and so he'll just like look over in surprise and be very confused as to why I'm crying. But he has been a very patient and supportive husband throughout this first trimester. And then finally, I just wanted to end with some of the highlights of this first trimester. I know that for a lot of women, the first 3 months are the least fun, but I'm just trying to savor every moment of this pregnancy, and there were a lot of really fun and happy and exciting and special moments that happened that I just want to remember. So obviously the first was finding out that we were pregnant. We had actually started trying about halfway through last year, so it's been about a year now of wanting to grow our family, and obviously we had the miscarriage the first time around. And then the second time around, we didn't get pregnant immediately. So when we did find out the news, it was just so exciting. And the line came up so fast this time that like there was no doubt. And it was just a really sweet and special memory. The second highlight is kind of an odd one. It wasn't a fun highlight, but it was a memorable highlight, and that was morning sickness. So obviously not fun, but even when I was feeling my sickest, I tried to keep in mind that it was a sign that my body was dealing with a little embryo, and it was a nice reminder that I was pregnant. And Since I didn't have any nausea the first time around, I was really grateful that it was a sign that my hormones were increasing and that everything was developing normally. That being said, I am very grateful that it only lasted 3 weeks in my case and was relatively mild, like I didn't throw up at all. I know there are some women who have it their entire first trimester or their entire pregnancy with much more severe symptoms than I did. So kudos to you if you are going through that or have been through that. The next highlight was sharing our news with friends and family. I told my parents immediately when I found out because they knew we were trying, and I was really excited and I just wanted to share the news with someone. And I also told some of my best friends because I knew, even in the case of miscarriage a second time around, that I would want their support. But it was so fun sharing the news with them, and it was so fun being able to talk to friends during the first trimester because we were keeping it a secret from everyone else, and it's a really hard secret to keep. So it was really fun to just talk about the pregnancy with my good friends. And then towards the end of the first trimester, we opened up a bit more and shared the news with a lot of our other friends and family members, and everyone was just so excited and happy for us. And it just made me relive the excitement of finding out that I was pregnant all over again. So we did that when I was 13 weeks, and that was a really fun week. Another big highlight was getting to see the baby in ultrasounds and getting to hear the heartbeat. And that was so sweet and special and fun and exciting and just the funnest experience. I love going to see the baby so much in our ultrasounds. We've only had 2 so far. We had one when I was 8 weeks, and the baby was only 2 centimeters long and just looked like a little bean. And then we had a second one when I was 12 weeks, and the baby was only 6.5 centimeters, but already looked so much like a baby and already starting to move too. So those were both really fun visits, and I'm looking forward to our next appointment, which is when I'm 19 weeks along. Another big highlight for us was finding out the results of the NIPT testing, which is non-invasive prenatal testing. If you don't know what that is, it's when they take a sample of the mother's blood because there are fragments of the baby's DNA that are floating in the mom's blood, and so they can find those fragments and then look for chromosomal abnormalities and also look at the gender of the baby. So we did that when I was 12 weeks, and then we found out the results about 10 days later, and we were just so happy that all of the chromosomes were looking normal and healthy. And we did choose to find out the gender, which was really exciting. And finding out the gender for me was like opening a birthday or Christmas present where you don't know what it is, but you know you're gonna love it anyways, and you're just so excited to find out what it is. And then lastly, just all of the little day-to-day moments of being happy and excited with TJ, and talking to my belly and rubbing my belly and making plans, and the news is still so new and exciting, and it's just been really fun and really sweet. So that's all for this video. Hopefully in the next update I will have a more satisfying baby bump to show you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!